Hey guys, here's a peek at the art journal page we're making today. Before I began filming, I applied black gesso on my page, and then I'm now going to put down strips of Spectrum Sherbert postage washi. And this is a washi tape that actually has the little perforation marks that stamps do in between each of the stamps, so you can apply it as a strip, or you can cut it apart as I'm doing here for individual stamps. So because I'm also working on the first page of my journal, I decided to decorate a little bit of the cover as well as my page. So I'm cutting apart all these pieces of washi tape into individual stamps and applying them all over my page. Then I'm grabbing several colors of distress crayons in the colors of the rainbow, and I'm going to scribble these on the back of my page and then smush them out with my finger. I'm able to do this because I applied gesso, so the crayons will slide really nicely on the gessoed surface. And I'm just going to keep working from color to color until I have the entire background covered with distress crayons. I'm also taking care to have the colors that play nicely together be touching, and colors that don't are separated with a friendly color. So color theory is very important when we're applying these crayons onto the background of our page. A list of all the colors plus the names of the rest of the products that I'm using in this video are listed in the description below, so check that out if you want more information about anything that I'm using on this art journal page. So after the background is covered with distress crayons, I'm placing down a stencil and then rubbing through that with a wet baby wipe. And again, because I'm applying this on gesso, that distress crayon is going to lift right up and I'm going to get a ghosting effect from the stencil. Then I'm putting down some splatter with some blue paint that I watered down so that it would splatter nicely all over the page. And then I can let that dry while I'm doing some more stamping. So I'm going to be stamping down several of these Dina Wakley Media stamps onto typed ledger paper. And I am going to be using several different sheets because I want to have different colors of ledger paper, and I'm going to cut out all these birds to collage on the top of my page. Next, I'm putting down two different colors of gold metallic paint, and I'm using a 2-inch wide paintbrush to apply that to my page. So I'm picking up both of those paint colors with one brush, and then I'm also taking care that I'm not swiping and going over the same areas multiple times because I'm not wanting to remove and overblend these two paint colors. And then I'm going to set that aside to dry. When the gold paint is dry, I'm grabbing the same stencil we used in the background, but now I'm going to go over the gold paint with some black paint to mimic the background that we've already created with the same design. And when all that is dry, we can begin working on our collage. So this is a piece of burlap that I'm just cutting into a smaller piece, and then I'm going to freehand a scallop design into the burlap. And when I'm done cutting out, you're going to actually see that I have two pieces. So the piece that I'm cutting off, I will save and use in a future collage. If you wanted a more precise scalloped edge, you could draw it with a marker and then cut it out with your scissors instead of freehanding like I did. I'm going to glue down the burlap with Dina Wakley Media Ultra Thick Gel Medium. It's a perfect adhesive when you're working with any kind of heavyweight fabrics like burlap because it'll permanently bond but remain flexible, which is perfect for art journals. And then I'm taking an old cover from a gel medium and twisting it into some white gesso and make marks on my page. And I'm going to keep doing this until I'm happy with the coverage, and then I'm going to let it dry. I'm continuing the collage by now gluing down my cutout birds with more Dina Wakley Media Ultra Thick Gel Medium. I like to use Ultra Thick when I'm working on collage because sometimes I'm not 100% happy with where I place down my elements, and because it has a 10-minute open dry time, I'm able to move elements around and change my mind, and then when it's dry, it's permanent. I'm also going to add some color to my birds with different colors of Dina Wakley Media paint. Again, those colors are listed in the description below. I'm going to just use a small brush and put it around the edges to add shadowing and highlights. I'm not covering the bird 100%. And when I'm happy with it, I'm going to let that dry and move on to painting and gluing down my next bird. You could, of course, paint these birds before you glue them down, but I like to have them in place on my page and then add the paint because it helps me to see what's on the page and sometimes informs my placement of the paint. So like I said, I'm going to glue down my next bird, and I'm also taking care to make sure I get a little bit of that gel medium on the bottom of the feet so that those stick down to the page too. And I'm going to glue that into place. And then I'm also going to put down the third little bird. And all of these birds come from the Dina Wakley Media Scribbly Birds sets 1 and 2. And then I'm going to let that dry while I add some more paint to the birds. I really like these birds because I stamped them on typed ledger paper and then cut them out, and I'm now adding some paint highlights. They're really interesting to look at. You can't read the words, but that's okay because it's supposed to be more of an artistic effect versus being able to actually read all the text, and I think that's really interesting. So like I said, I added colors to all these birds, and I'm making sure that I'm doing them in analogous color palette so that as I'm applying this paint, they're going to blend and work together nicely. And I'm making sure that I'm doing them in different colorways. So blue and green, pinks and purples, and yellow and orange. And when all these are dry, I'm grabbing a white Posca paint pen and just putting the catchlight into the bird's eyes so that they look alive. And then I'm going to cut up a quote from the Dina Wakley Media Type Ledger Pack, the same one that I used for stamping out all of these birds. The quote I chose for today's page says, "Art is a space in which freedom tests its wings," by Marty Rubin. And I picked this quote because I thought it was appropriate for multiple elements that I already had on my page, both for the colorful art elements and the fact that I chose birds. I picked this because, again, it was very appropriate for what I had already had going. And I've also done it where I picked the quote first and then made all of my elements fit the quote. And I've done it a third way, which means just pick a quote at random because I liked it on the day and it doesn't necessarily affiliate with anything I put on the page. You can do it any way that speaks to you and how you like to work. I cut apart all the elements of the quote into 3 different pieces and then also the author's name into a 4th piece. And you can see I stuck it down on top of the bird's feet, but then I didn't like that. So I'm lifting it up and putting it in a new area, which again is the beauty of Dina Wakley Media Ultra Thick. You can change your mind. I think that the word quote blocks are a little too white, so I'm going to tint those with Dina Wakley Media Scribble Sticks and a wet paintbrush. And by taking that wet paintbrush directly to the scribble stick, I'm able to pick up bits of pigment and I can place them down exactly where I want on all of the pieces of quotes, and then I can let that dry. To finish out the page and really draw your eye to our quote, I'm grabbing a Ranger scraper tool and some black paint. You could also use an old credit card, a hotel key, or anything you have that would make a straight line. And I'm dipping it into the black paint and going around all of my quote pieces so that it's really drawing your eye so that they pop from the page. And then once again, to continue to draw your eye to the quote, I'm just going to add some lines around the quote to kind of frame it out and have some more detailed interest on the page. And when I'm happy with it, when I think it looks really great, I'm going to let this all dry and our page is done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got ideas to use in your own art journals. I'd love to see what you're working on, so take a picture and post it with hashtag ArtJournalJunction. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button so YouTube knows you want to see more mixed media projects and art journaling videos in the future.